Hi, and welcome to Biospaces the Weekly. I'm your host, Jeff Axt, and today is the Lilly Show. This wasn't planned as a special episode, but Eli Lilly stole all the headlines this week with nearly half a dozen new deals to add to its already record-setting year, not to mention benchmark-setting weight loss results for its next-gen obesity treatment. Outside of Lilly, we will touch on Moderna's once-rebuffed mRNA flu vaccine, as well as its hantavirus vaccine projects, and we'll also provide a preview to the upcoming ASCO meeting, which kicks off this Friday in Chicago. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome back from the holiday weekend. You guys do anything fun?
I literally just gardened. I mean, it's not a holiday here in Canada, but I did get to enjoy a day off. So I went golfing and then I was finally able to plant out into my garden. So busy weekend.
I love that. How about you, Gabby?
I went on a 10-mile bike ride. It was super nice. It rained a little bit and I got extremely sunburned. I was like, how is this happening? But it was overall good.
It always takes me 3 or 4 sunburns before I finally get the point and start wearing sunscreen every year.
And those overcast days will trick you. You think that you're in the clear, and those are the worst.
I've been doing sunscreen on my face, but I'm really working on my farmer's tan now that I have my garden. So it's looking really nice, guys.
Jeff, how was your weekend? I heard it was someone's birthday.
Yes, yeah. Today, Tuesday, is technically my birthday, but my family celebrated over the weekend. My daughter threw me a cute little backyard party with the cutest fox piñata. I have never had a piñata at one of my birthday parties before, so that was very special. Guess I had to wait to 43 to make that happen.
What did she put in it?
Yeah.
Candy, lots of candy.
My kids would probably put rocks or something in it and just eat the candy.
No, they got Sour Patch because they know I like Sour Patch, among other things.
That's so sweet.
It was good. Well, let's get to our show. Obviously, it's Lilly, and more Lilly, but let's start by introducing ourselves. Annalee, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Annalee Armstrong. I'm senior editor at Biospace, and I do the weekly Biopharm Executive newsletter.
And I'm Gabrielle Mason. I prepare our weekly manufacturing brief and then our daily gene pool newsletter.
And I'm Jeff Axt, managing editor. Our other senior editor, Heather McKenzie, is out enjoying a little bit of a break right now, but I'll put in a plug for her weekly newsletter, Clinica Space, which normally goes out on Mondays, but should have hit your inboxes today, Tuesday, on this holiday week. So again, diving in to Lilly. There are a few different elements of Lilly that we'll need to touch on. They have swept the headlines today, and after making several headlines last week. But today's big one was their vaccine trifecta. So they made this slew of deals on top of the many, many deals they've already been making. Annalee, you covered that one.
Yes, this one was one of the crazier deals that I've seen in pharma recently. He has actually bought 3 separate companies. I had never heard of any of these companies, maybe the last one. So they're buying Curavo, LimaTech Biologics, and the Vaccines Company, the aptly named biotech. So this is Lilly is going to pay $3.8 billion total. There were upfront fees and some milestones. Those were not broken down. So kind of a small outlay, but a really critical acquisition for Lilly. They are going to acquire across this kind of portfolio of biotechs. They're going to get shots for shingles, bacterial pathogens, one for Epstein-Barr virus. Lilly has kind of framed this as a way to prevent diseases that are known to cause long-term complications. Epstein-Barr, for example, has been linked to multiple sclerosis and multiple cancers. So this is a really big cluster of deals from Lilly and kind of suggests that they are moving in this infectious disease trajectory.
And just to be clear, these are all earlier stage in development or even preclinical. None of these are close to market just yet.
Yes, I think we saw there was one that was phase 1, one that was maybe in phase 2. We're still trying to actually confirm some of that information. So early stuff, and kind of represents what Lilly's been doing, which is trying to bolster their early stage pipeline with some of this money that they've made from their GLP-1s.
And then, of course, vaccines. We can't talk about this space without talking about Peter Marks, the famed vaccine regulator who left the FDA early in Trump's term after pledging to stay and work with the new administration. And then that was not tenable, and he left under not great circumstances.
Yeah, so Peter Marks is apparently going to be the leader in charge of all these companies, which is fantastic. It seems like Lilly has essentially bought him a pipeline. A couple analysts pointed this out. So he is now going to be in charge of these 3 companies, shaping Lilly's vaccine policy. So pretty cool role for him as he kind of puts the FDA in the rear view.
Yeah. And as we kind of commented, you said this morning, I think, Annalee, kind of explains we were a little confused when Marks first went to Lilly after leaving the FDA, but here we go. Now he's got a pipeline to work with.
Yeah, and like now there's an opinion we should have put out on the podcast because I was like, why is Lilly hiring Marks? I mean, of course, why he's a well-known leader in this space. Like, obviously, he's like the vaccines regulator here. So it made sense, but it was still just like, well, Lilly doesn't really have an infectious disease pipeline. So we wondered if they were going to make an acquisition. Here they are. We should have put that in public, Jeff. Although if we put everything in public, a lot of our stuff would be, just.
Yeah, exactly. We got to keep some stuff close to the vest.
We wouldn't always get it right, but it feels really good. I just want to say that we did call this behind the scenes.
Yeah. But it's also interesting. I mean, one of the main reason that Mark cited for his leaving the FDA was the challenges in the vaccine market with RFK, a known vaccine skeptic, stepping up as Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department. So that hasn't changed. I mean, the vaccine sector as a whole has continued to face headwinds because of this ideology that now sits on top of HHS. And we have watched vaccine makers struggle. We have watched vaccine makers such as Moderna cancel trials. So this is kind of interesting to see Lilly doubling down in this space.
Yeah, I think that these deals are really crucial. All of these companies, Sanofi, Merck, GSK, they have all reported declines in vaccine sales that has actually been, becoming material on their earnings report. So here is Eli Lilly, which is now the biggest pharma company in the world, saying we still believe in vaccines. We still believe in coming up with preventatives for infectious diseases. What is going on in the regulatory environment and, maybe some of the vaccine hesitancy does not matter to our, future business. So that is, I think, a really powerful endorsement of vaccines. They're not alone. Pfizer has done a licensing deal with Novavax. Sanofi acquired Dynavax last year. So companies are seeing this as an opportunity right now. And that's fantastic because we do need more vaccines.
Wasn't it Sanofi CEO who said buy the dip or whatever it was or something along those lines?
Yeah, for sure. Paul Hudson, who has now moved on, unfortunately, from Sanofi. But, another thing that's kind of key about this is Curavo, which is one of the companies that Lilly is buying. They have a shingles vaccine, and Lilly thinks that they can do better on tolerability, which has been a bit of a challenge with GSK's approved vaccine, Shingrix, which is, one of their most well-known products. So there's some real interesting competitive dynamics here. And I think it's safe to say that vaccines are alive and well in the pipelines of pharma at the moment.
Well, that's certainly good to hear. We won't get into the public health side of the discussion, but I love hearing the pharma investment and the pipeline continuing to grow there. And of course, these 3 deals, those are just the most recent of this week. This week alone, we have more Lilly deals. So Gabby, you covered one last week. Why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable, honestly, but the 3 buyouts that were announced kind of follow a separate acquisition just last week by Lilly. So in that deal, the pharma offered up to $202 million for a preclinical biotech, which is fairly notable, that doesn't have any publicly disclosed pipeline programs, but touts a non-viral DNA delivery platform. The science is supposed to address current limitations in DNA delivery and help Lilly bolster its genetic medicine candidates. Somehow that's not the only deal that was made last week for Lilly either. They
And that
made
one was
another.
Engage Bio. You had some good puns with that one. I loved it. Lilly is engaged to a new biotech or whatever it was.
Yes, that was a really fun one to write. I love when the biotechs have, kind of punny names that we can have some fun with in the headlines and things. So yes, that was Engage Bio. And then they also made another deal. That one continues their commitment to AI by teaming up with collaborative drug discovery. And they provide data management solutions for life sciences. So that was actually one of 3 pharma AI collabs announced last week, with Bristol Myers Squibb teaming up with Anthropic to use Claude among many realms of its business. And then Insight also expanded its relationship with Genesis Molecular AI in hopes of discovering at least 5 new disease targets. So it's great to see so many deals just in the sector in general. It's been pretty busy this quarter and this year.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
what's key about all of these deals too is that they're very early stage. We were seeing a lot of M&A specifically tip towards late stage. Then we started to hear analysts say, listen, all the kind of low-hanging fruit or like the real, obvious programs have been picked off. But now companies are starting to go early stage, which is exactly what we need to start getting some more innovation into this sector. So it's a really great sign.
Agreed. Yeah, those earlier stage pipelines. And then also the continued investment in AI. I mean, it's nonstop, but it's good to understand more about how the companies are using it. And we get little peeks and insights with these deals. All right. Well, Lilly, because of all of this dealing, has been placed as pharma's top dog by Idea Pharma, which for 8 years now has been rating drug makers based on how well they can take a small molecule drug, a theoretical small molecule drug, not a specific one, but just the idea of taking a drug through early in clinical development and then executing a successful commercial strategy. Idea Pharma that does this analysis breaks it down into two parts. There's the invention side where you've got the idea, and you bring it through early and clinical development, and then there's the innovation part, which is that commercial application part of it. And again, I am a real proponent of treating these two things differently and looking at them differently after the whole Bluebird Bio incident where they've got 3 marketed gene therapies and they can't make ends meet. So I think it's really appropriate to look both at the science and at the commercial prowess of these companies. So Idea Pharma ranks the pharma. They've been doing it for 8 years in a row. Lilly is at the top, not just of one, but of both. It's the first time that Idea Pharma has done this analysis and a single company has taken the cake on both sides. It's not a surprise. We started the show. Lilly is stealing all of our headlines. Their sales are surging up almost 50% year over year. And then, of course, this rapidly growing pipeline that they continue to fill with these deals. And then also, on top of great deals and a good pipeline, they also have like some pretty positive readouts coming on. That pipeline is doing quite well. So that's a little nice transition to another huge Lilly headline in the past week to update you on is their next gen weight loss asset. So Annalie, tell us about that.
Yeah, so the data that we saw for retatrutide, which is one of Lilly's next-gen obesity assets, is a really good example of what IDEA was talking about. In this latest readout, the drug led to weight loss of 70 pounds, or 28.3% after 80 weeks, which is, I believe, the highest that we've seen. This is a drug that Lilly has positioned to be used for more severe obesity cases. But they also had a low dose group that had really strong data as well. In that arm, there was 19% weight loss, or 47.2 pounds at that same time point. BMO Capital Markets said that this data point kind of suggests that retatrutide could be tailored to patients. So it's not just for these severe obesity cases.
So if it's meant typically for the more extreme cases, though, are there going to be a little bit more flexibility with the tolerability profile?
Yeah, so this drug has had kind of an interesting safety profile. In earlier studies, there were cases of dysesthesia, which is a neurological condition that causes normal sensations to feel unusual or painful. So that was a bit of a weird one that emerged, and I believe it's the first time that some of these weight loss drugs have seen something like that. So the rate of dysesthesia in this latest readout, it did rise along with the dose. So the higher dose group saw more instances of this. So there were about 12.5% of patients who reported it in that high dose arm. This was, however, lower than the earlier study, and analysts were pretty satisfied with not only the lower side effect rate, but lower discontinuation rates in this readout. So I guess it's just another win for Lilly.
They just keep coming. And then there was another one too, Gabby, from
We're not done with Lilly.
Yeah, no, there's still more. But wait, there's more. Their Verve deal. So Lilly bought up Verve last year, but they had a readout recently that again, another win for Lilly.
Yeah, so they bought Verve for 1.3 billion, so a hefty chunk of change. And that included the company's gene therapy that's designed to treat a condition that it raises the risk of early heart disease. So now an ongoing phase 1b trial has shown that the base editor lowers bad cholesterol, or LDL cholesterol levels. So a single dose was actually seen to lower LDL cholesterol levels by 62%. So that billion-dollar buy seems to really, really be paying off.
Interesting to see gene therapy applied to cardiovascular. There's a lot of options currently on the market, but I've heard a lot of chatter about moving more and more toward those preventive therapies. And I wonder if this could maybe fall into that category, or at least just be, less chronic treatment than we currently see.
Yeah, you don't see that a lot at all, and you don't really see gene therapies as preventative either. So really interesting on all aspects.
Early stage, but one to watch for sure. All right. Well, at long last, I do think we've wrapped up most of our Lilly headlines there. Of course, we'll have more for you on that. Whatever the giant is doing next week, I'm sure they'll make more headlines throughout the week. But let's pivot now. So another company we do want to touch on today is Moderna. So Moderna, I mentioned them earlier in the show when we were talking about the vaccine space, well-known company in the vaccine space, having brought COVID vaccines to the market. And, the company kind of skyrocketed in the pandemic heyday. has struggled, though, since then, of course, as many vaccine makers have. And they have actually canceled a lot of their late stage vaccine trials in infectious disease and is more focusing on their cancer vaccines at this point. But we are in the midst of some hantavirus fears. So, what's going on there? Emily, you're going to take this one.
Yeah, so we had a story that went out last week talking about kind of the fear trade that is happening amid this cluster of hantavirus cases that stem from a cruise ship. So some scary stuff coming out of there. And this is kind of, renewed interest a little bit in Moderna specifically because Moderna was the company, remember, that like very quickly made one of the COVID-19 vaccines. It was really developed at lightning speed thanks to Moderna's mRNA platform. So this moment with hantavirus has kind of brought analysts back, and Moderna has experienced a little bit of a surprise uptick in their share price recently as this has been going on. Now, Moderna has not exactly come out and said, hey, we're going to develop a vaccine for hantavirus. However, they have some previous work that they've done kind of with some in like the more academic setting. So analysts don't really expect this to be a major market for Moderna, but this could be a great moment for them to kind of remind the world of what they're capable of. I believe Jeffrey said that this could help them build goodwill amid a general downturn in vaccine rates in the US.
I think just general sentiment on how this hantavirus scare is going to just bring public attention back towards the public health side of vaccines and maybe push back a little bit more against some of the anti-vaccine moves that we've seen in the administration. So Moderna specifically, or just public health and vaccines broadly, maybe there's a silver lining to this hantavirus outbreak right now.
Right. And some of these infectious disease outbreaks can be kind of tricky for biopharmas to navigate. It can be a big risk. So it's not always something that companies want to really jump into.
Yeah. Or it can be like the biggest thing in 100 years with COVID, and
Like
those companies,
Moderna and
right?
BioNTech.
Moderna, BioNTech, absolutely. Yep. Well, also on Moderna, and again, getting back to their mRNA vaccines for these infectious diseases, we can all think back to February. We coined it Moderna Gate when the FDA and specifically former CBER Director Vinay Prasad served Moderna with a refuse to file for their mRNA based flu vaccine. So this is not a rejection. This is a rejection of the application to even review it, which came as a shock. FDA Commissioner Marty McCary was pulled up to Donald Trump's office, and then within a week or so, the FDA did accept that application, and it is now under review. But Gabby, give us the update on what's going on there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. That move was the first time that really prompted vocal industry-wide backlash under this new kind of FDA administration. And so now, obviously, like you said, the agency reversed course and they've set up an AdCom for the application, which is particularly interesting given the lack of AdComs we've seen under this FDA. So the vaccine panel set to meet on June 8th. So that's definitely something we'll be watching very closely.
Yeah, you're right. We just covered the AstraZeneca AdCom just a couple weeks ago, and that was the first one after a 9-month drought of no AdComs at all at the FDA. And the AdComs have been a particular focus for former Commissioner Marty McCary. One of the first moves he made when he stepped into that role was to limit industry involvement, or to make a formal rule that if you served in industry, you couldn't serve on AdComs. And this was a bit of a challenge, especially in the vaccine space, where so much of that expertise comes from industry. And then the FDA instituted these expert panels, which it was never really clear how they differed from AdComs, other than the couple that they had before these kind of petered out seemed very stacked. And the feedback we got was they were just trying to support a specific agenda. So there wasn't a lot of positive reception to those. And then, like I said, this drought, nothing, no expert panels, no AdComs, and still a lot of decisions that industry was questioning. So I'm glad to see AdComs coming back, especially for a controversial decision like this. You need that external expertise to kind of guide the FDA. And then it will be especially interesting as these AdComs come back. Will the FDA follow the AdComs? I know Heather has put together some stats on historically how often does the FDA follow the AdCom advice. So I would be curious to see if that differs as we start to bring AdComs back into the cycle.
I have to say,
Yeah.
from a productivity perspective, I haven't missed all day AdComs, but it has really, it's such a great picture into the regulatory process that you really, up until, now we're getting these complete response letters, but like previously, you really didn't know what the FDA was thinking unless there was an AdCom held. So it's a really great, transparency effort that I think is lacking at the FDA and really always has.
And nowhere do we need more transparency than vaccines and mRNA vaccines specifically. So
I do think it's interesting because typically a lot of these adcoms are saved for rare diseases or really therapies like gene therapies that aren't tested in a ton of patients. So it is interesting to see it in something like a flu shot, which would be a lot more commonplace. I think you're right. Like it's good to see this transparency, especially around something that has been so controversial with all the vaccine like skepticism. But yeah, it's just typically something that I wouldn't consider maybe one that would go up for an AdCom, but I think, in the current day and age that we're in, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So we'll watch for that. That's next month. Sooner than next month, Friday, all eyes will be on ASCO. So the American Society of Clinical Oncology kicks off May 29th out in Chicago. We have a preview of the meeting out today in Clinica Space. I'll just give you a couple of high points from that as we look forward to that. A Revolution, we all were paying attention last month when their investigational pill nearly doubled overall survival in pancreatic cancer. That was really exciting. And they have a plenary at ASCO to give more data on that. Experts that we spoke to are really eager for a little bit more information on the depth of the response and the results based on patient specific mutation. And then also toxicities. Heather has covered this. There has been a high rate, around 30% had serious side effects, and even more, a vast majority of patients had a rash. So I think analysts and industry watchers are really curious to learn more about Revolution specific data. And then those companies that are challenging Revolution in the pancreatic cancer space or competing with them and bringing new therapies to market are also focused on making that tolerability profile better for patients.
That one's going to be standing room only, I bet. It's going to be hard to find a seat there.
Agreed. Another one that might have that same problem, another plenary, this one was given to Akeso, which has the Summit Therapeutics partnered bispecific ivonescimab. This is the PD-1 VEGF bispecific antibody that has been closely watched since Summit partnered with Akeso. And the trial results were primarily coming out of China. And this one, grew to popularity by being known as the Keytruda killer. It outperformed Keytruda in one of these China trials, and specifically with progression-free survival. Really positive data just last October from the European Society for Medical Oncology Congress. So this was all the rage. This is going to be the next big thing until we started seeing some of the global clinical trials come out. And with a broader patient population, there were less stellar progression-free survival results. Still, enough to keep moving the therapy forward, but not the Keytruda killer that the industry maybe had once thought we were looking at. So the data that are going to be coming out at ASCO this week are for overall survival, not progression-free survival. And so this is what everybody's waiting to see. We have progression-free survival, but often overall survival lag. So we want to see good data there, but this is a China trial. This is Harmony 6. And so what a couple of the experts that we spoke with were saying is basically you need stellar overall survival data coming out of China if you expect those numbers to drop as you put this into global testing. So everyone will be curious, what is the overall survival data that Akeso can report? And it's going to need to be better than you would have wanted to see in a global trial because this is China-only data. So that and much, much more coming out at ASCO later this week. We'll be following that closely, so stay tuned to Biospace for that. And then just to wrap up our show, as we always do, Annalee, what can you tell us about Biopharma Executive this week?
Yeah, so we have our annual executive compensation special edition. So the entire Biopharm Executive newsletter is going to be about our recent compensation analysis. We've been kind of teasing this all month, talking about the stories we've been putting out. So as long as you are subscribed to Biopharm Executive, you will get that in your inboxes. If you are not already subscribed, please do so at the top right corner of our website. You will be missing out if you don't.
Definitely check that out. That's one of my favorite special editions of the year. It's always kind of mind-blowing to see what these people make. And I know you put out a number of stories, but having that all pulled together is definitely a good read. So that's it for our show today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.